what better occasion or place to honor our artist and landscape architect, Walter Hood, who this beautiful event has come together in production in close creative collaboration with Brant Hayford Studios, who's based here in Harlem. As I mentioned, I'm not an architect, but I'm connected to the Jerome Hayford part of Brant Hayford, and I live here in the neighborhood, and I love this park for the imaginings and reimaginings that it invokes. Invisible Men that are here, Summers of Soul, antebellum watchtowers, classical theater of Harlem, all of the different people intersecting and interacting in different ways, finding themselves and creating new futures. Before I give you some instructions of how we're going to enjoy this break in the weather to ascend to the first floor of the park, I want to give huge thanks to the Marcus Garvey Park Alliance, huge thank you to the New York City Department of Parks. Huge thank you to Jason Marshall, our beautiful saxophonist who was there and probably wanted to take care of his instrument. We are also guided by Mfouambila, drummers and artists, soul makers and rhythm makers, who are going to help guide us down. So, without further ado, let's start to make our way down. Yeah. Woohoo!
thank you all for coming. I'm Rosalie Ginevra, the Executive Director of the League, and we are delighted to be here now under a blue sky and in Marcus Garvey Park. Thank you so much to Mfouambila Kongo Dance Company for starting us off in a fantastic way. And thank you to Jerome Hayford and Brant Knapp for working with us on every single aspect of this evening. It's been an amazingly fun and productive collaboration, and we're thrilled to have worked with them and very, very grateful for all that they brought to this project. So we have a number of speakers tonight, and we're going to move right into it. Our first speaker is a poet, Tonya M. Foster, who is a native of New Orleans, a resident of California. She spent a recent sojourn in New York, and she is someone who is very deeply interested in place. And we're delighted to have her tonight with a special poem in honor of Walter Hood.
This poem is a poem in progress that is influenced and in conversation with Walter Hood's blues and jazz landscape improvisations. There are four things that Hood points to. He says, one, that culture is a collective set of experiences in time. He identifies space and order. Space is boundless, three-dimensional extent in which objects and events occur, each having a relative position and direction. Order is the arrangement and sequence of these objects and events in time. There's the framework, the physical geometry which orders space, and the soul. So Mount Morris Park was renamed Marcus Garvey Park in 1973. Durant Park, purchased and constructed in 1973, and I'm just sort of doing association, right, is one of several mini parks in West Oakland. These figures in the poem come from the improvisations that Hood undertook. Hood Hauntings, a poem in progress. At this hour, standing here among you on this bit of earth that is our momentary lot, I want to say that the self is not a single body bound. Earth is, after all, a planetary constellation pressing past our cautiously corralling calculations. I want to say that the self is not to a single body bound. The tender way she holds her lover's scarf tells us everything she won't say about his touch, about her quiet wanting. I want to say that the self is not a single body bound. In the gentle way the bearded addict folds his lanky arms across his torso, ashen is a semaphore for what we cannot hold. I want to say that the body is not a single body bound. The doubter, situated as he is at road forks and rivers, dreams in circuits of certainty that can only short circuit one, such as he. I want to say that the self is not a single body bound, and the optimist has never seen the schist for the moss, and the pessimist refuses to see the sky beyond the mind, and refuses to see that was is not always, and that is not will be. I want to say that the self is not a single body bound, and the loner who knows this cries to herself, wrought of words and worries. She hunkers down with her arms full of absences more bearable than the gregariousness of neighbors. What is an I without you or them? Say I want, therefore. To say that the self is not a singular body bound is to dream in real time. Time, talk is a cosmic conjuring of past and metal fences, past the clipped and cultivated lawns, past today's neighborhood congregants, past the omnipresent past there's no way of filtering out. To say that the self is not a singular body bound is to make space for the girl, become lover, become mother, who breathes for a time for another, is to embrace that each I is only in the company of we, if only an idea of we. And myself is not a single body, is not a body singularly situated among the stars, among things, among thoughts, among words, among syllables, among shopping carts, among breaths and boxes. Myself is not by my body's boundaries bound. In the thicket, we are. I am because we are. And we are mostly spirit, salve and spear. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya. Our next speaker is Mabel Wilson, who is an architect and a professor of architecture and African studies at Columbia University, and also a member of the board of the Architectural League. Mabel.
In her sage words, novelist Toni Morrison puts forward that, quote, "The overweening event of the modern world is not technology. It is the mass movement of populations," end quote. Here, Harlem, great migrations, border crossings, diaspora. These are the sites where Walter Hood makes work. Over the past several decades, Walter has crafted every day commemorative, beguiling, socially relevant landscapes through a creative process that takes measure of where people are going. From where have they come? Who has been here before? Who and what is here now and in the future? Walter's is a remarkable body of work in what it calls forth and who it calls to. His art marks place with plantings of plant matter, wood, steel, sweat, and memory. He has artfully scaped the urban envelopes of the Cooper Hewitt, the De Young, the Broad museums. He plants structures like totemic sky rises to the power of blackness in the galleries of MoMA. Here, Black Towers, Black Power presents the public with a far more radical vision of what can be the architectures of social life than the institution's archives could ever imagine as modern. Hood Design Studio's soon-to-be dedicated landscape for Charleston's International African American Museum creates a threshold between land and sea, between past and future. His poetic landscapes of plant and waters and textile, smells, colors, sounds, and cycles reverberates with the aquatic flows of time, remembering the Middle Passage and the slave trade that brought Africans to the Americas and to Charleston. These plantations birthed blackness. And in works like these, Walter and his collaborators weave the warp and weft of an America still in formation. By rooting his practice in Oakland, Oaktown, hella Oaklandish, a place that once was a crucible for the blues and jazz, whose sound streamed into neighborhoods by way of Southern migrants, Pullman porters, and musicians who hailed from Memphis, New Orleans, and Chicago, Walter taps into these histories in a call and response of sound, form, space, and image. It's Walter's brilliant I-mindedness that translates this rich history and difficult truths into forms that speaks for and to often hidden and marginalized, forgotten communities like West Oakland or Buffalo or Macon. In a conversation with artist Rick Lowe in the most recent issue of Gagosian Quarterly, that's the historian in me, always provide the citation. Walter pondered the value in preserving places like Harlem's own Apollo Theater by asking, quote, how do we somehow create a new way of not romanticizing these places, but saying these are the infrastructural footings for new generations? Because you have to look back to go forward. It's those things that I'm still trying to figure out in my head, end quote. Headspace, figuring. That encapsulate his brilliant spatial imaginaries as well as his ethically grounded practice and penchant for exquisitely creating works that thoughtfully look back in order to keep us moving forward with grit, grace, and determination. Congratulations, Walter, on receiving this year's Architectural League's Presidential Medal.
Thank you, Mabel, and thank you to Mabel and our next speaker, Mario Gooden, for helping think this event. I mean, helping Mario's suggestion to do the event in Marcus Garvey Park and Mabel's suggestions and many of the participants in it. So thank you both. Mario Gooden is a founding principal of Huff and Gooden Architects, professor of architecture at Columbia GSAP, and the vice president for architecture of the Architectural League. Mario.
Good evening. I don't really know if I can follow my sister Mabel, but I'm going to try, Walter. Writing in the August 1921 issue of The Crisis, which was the NAACP's National Monthly Journal, W.B. Du Bois described Idlewild, a resort town in northwestern Michigan that would later be nicknamed Black Eden in the 1950s and 60s. And I quote, "For sheer physical beauty, for sheen of water and golden air, for nobleness of tree and flower of shrub, for shining river and song of bird and the low, moving whisper of sun, moon, and star, it is the beautifulest stretch I've ever seen for 20 years. And then to that add fellowship, all sons and great-grandchildren of Ethiopia, all with the wide leisure of rest and play. Can you imagine a more marvelous thing than Idlewild? Absolute freedom from the desperate cruelty of the color line and for the wooing of the great silence, which is peace and deep contentment." As Du Bois later wrote in The Souls of Black Folks, the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. Hence, Idlewild and its commune with nature, the environment, and landscape is a condition that offers liberation from the color line. Although Booker T. Washington famously stated that no race can prosper till it learns that there is as much dignity in tilling the field as in writing a poem, Black people have always known how to make productive landscapes and how to make poetry out of the land. How to take the commons of North America as the context of enslavement and enclosure and transform the plot of the plantation into the soul-sustaining nourishment of mind and body, of yams, greens, peas, and Carolina gold rice. Black people have always known how to transform the land into landscapes of care and carve clearings to make a way out of no way, as my grandmother would say, that has given life to descendants who are our ancestors' wildest dreams. This imagination of the landscape as a site for liberation is not only reflected in Walter's brilliance as an artist and as a landscape architect, but also as a teacher, scholar, and writer. In Black Landscapes Matter, Walter declares, Black landscapes matter because they are prophetic. They tell the truth of the struggles and the victories of African Americans in North America. These landscapes are the prophecy of America. They tell us our future. It has been my pleasure to work with Walter over the past 2 decades, I think, but more importantly, to learn from Walter and to see liberation in the landscapes that he imagines. So this evening, I not only say congratulations, Walter, but thank you, my dear friend. You are our ancestors' wildest dreams.
The final one of our tributes will be given by Sara Zewde, a landscape architect who worked with Walter. Sarah's the principal of her own studio, Studio Zewde in Harlem, and is a 2021 Emerging Voice at the Architectural League. Sara.
I remember opening up Walter's book, Blues and Jazz Landscape Improvisations, for the first time. I had only recently taken to learning more about landscape architecture. While I had certainly found the subject of landscape architecture to be intriguing, it frankly never crossed my mind to enter the field. I can't even describe to you now why, in a conscious sense. It just never registered. I just didn't see myself having a connection to this field. But then there, in the pages of this book, were sketches of an approach to designing landscapes that felt unbound. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was analytical, yet poetic, precise in the way it cut across questions of both society and form. It employed modes of inquiry that included collage, sketching, photography, model making, musical allegory. Looking back on that day in the library, it's not an exaggeration to say to you today that Walter Hood's work is the reason that I am in this profession today. The Architectural League of New York's award of the President's Medal to Walter Hood is an occasion for us all in this moment to take stock of Walter's impact on the field and in the real places he works so delicately to shape. For decades, Walter has crafted his own design language, in large part in a conversation with himself and the people and the places that he works. With a BLA, MLA, MArch, and MFA, and references to cultural studies, poetry, contemporary art, music theory, and beyond, Walter has pulled together pieces of a dizzying array of disciplines to fashion a practice, a new practice of landscape architecture that is fitting for the world as he sees it. While I and so many others in this profession have Walter's work to reference, he created his own lane in this profession. I would end up moving to Oakland in 2012 to work in his office, and during that time I was struck by his impassioned commitment to what he calls the, quote, strangeness of each place. In his studio, every design move and every element in every landscape is rigorously interrogated. Every place means something. The underpass of the 580 freeway in Oakland, where he designed Splash Pad Park. The West Oakland BART station, where his iconic railroad trusses are now an icon, an emblem of the neighborhood. The elegant grove of olive trees on structure, which I modeled for a year in Rhino, at the Broad Museum in Los Angeles. And the gentle topographic forms that welcome visitors to the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco. But there is no design signature to Hood's work. Rather, his design practice is about identifying and investing in the process of culling out the strangeness of a particular place and elevating it. And while his practice has been around for over 25 years, Hood's legacy continues to usher in innovation as well as an entirely new generation of landscape architects, as his work is ahead of its time. Though you have already accomplished so much, tonight's award is only a sign that there's so much more to come. Congratulations, Walter.
I'm Paul Lewis. I'm the president of the Architectural League, and it's my extreme pleasure to present the League's highest honor to, as you might suspect, Walter Hood. And this is, as David mentioned, on the Acropolis. This is the first public event the League has had in 16 months. It's the first in this park, and it's the first in this park with a very specific history as a black landscape. We are thrilled to be here, and we thank Mario and Mabel for the idea to move this forward. And those of you who've been to other President's Medals, you realize this is unlike other President's Medals. I think that's a very good thing, and we're doing this unique to Walter and to Walter's uniqueness. Needless to say, it's very public, and I think if you know Walter's work, you know that his work is infused with a deep, nuanced understanding of public space. And as Sarah mentioned, Walter is also an inspiration to the next generation. So he really is a catalyst for this event, including the rain, which we can attribute to his ambition to constantly nurture the earth. But it was an absolute pleasure to witness the enthusiasm of Brant Knapp and Jerome Hayford with Coleman Downing as they produce this kind of fantastic event you see behind me, which will continue. And really, it's employing quilts, looking at collective space of bush arbors, reflecting Walter's thinking about improvisation and black landscapes. It's been fantastic, as Rosalie mentioned, to work with Jerome and Brant. Michael Beirut and Stephen Smith of Pentagram's inventive graphic design, which you'll see on the program, is infused with Walter's sensibility. And all of this is possible, as David mentioned, on the Acropolis, to a collaboration with the Parks Department, Marcus Garvey Parks Alliance. We owe huge thanks to Dan Chofie for his diligence in pulling this together. And I'm going to pause here for a second. We have to thank our amazing executive director, Rosalie Ginevro, for pulling this together, making this happen. And I've been telling everyone she's been offering tributes to the god of thunder. We didn't have thunder, we did have rain, but nonetheless. So look, in promoting this event, flyers were put around the park identifying Walter as one of the, and I quote, one of the greatest American landscape architects. Needless to say, this is a bold claim, but I think it's justified based on what we just heard from Tonya, Mario, Mabel, and Sara. But as Walter will tell you, he's not a landscape architect, and he's not just, I would argue, he's not just a great landscape architect. His strength is really that he draws from all the arts. He's a great artist, architect, maker, urban designer. He's really a great producer of spaces for culture that draws upon all of the arts. Now, too often greatness is actually seen as being based on a kind of a novelty or based on being a radical break with the past. But what distinguishes Walter's work, what makes his thinking so profound, is really his embrace of what could be called radical continuity, a radical continuity of culture, to look closely at the everyday, the mundane, the overlooked, and seeing it as having fundamental value. His work argues against erasure, but seeks to build culture through coexistence and our multiplicities and our difference. He's a passionate advocate for engagement with communities, not the imposition on communities. And he really is an exemplary designer who has transformed how design can and should work. So there could be no more fitting person to honor at this very moment of our re-engagement with public life. So please join me in welcoming Walter Hood and congratulating Walter Hood. I know. Thanks, man. So, you unfortunately have to suffer through me reading the actual official commemoration, so, which I will read now, and it's actually inside, but I'll read the outside version here. As an artist, designer, as a deeply engaged observer, listener, educator, and theorist, Walter Hood has transformed understanding of how to see and create meaning in landscapes and public spaces. He shows and teaches how to unearth suppressed histories and make connections visible, to see value in the unremarkable and create beauty in the mundane. Particulars, specifics, and idiosyncrasies guide his creative process. Walter and his studio shape bold, innovative places, responding to imperatives of memory, community, and ecology, combining poetry and science, embracing difference. Through his research, writing, and design, Walter has compelled attention to the centrality of Black landscapes in our collective culture. He has radically reshaped the agency of and expectation for landscape architecture. With deep admiration, the Architectural League awards its President's Medal to the contemporary prophet of landscape and public space, Walter Hood. This is the official medal, by the way, so. Medal. Thank you, guys. Can you take the medal? I sure can.
Wow. I said I wasn't going to tear up today, so rain came down a little bit, and things kind of mixed in, and it went into the ground. I have a few little sort of comments that I sort of realized today coming to New York. This is my first time traveling in a plane in 15, 16 months. I left New York when COVID hit, and I went home to Oakland, and I haven't returned. And even for the MoMA opening, I said I'm going to wait for this moment before I return, because I wanted it to be a celebratory sort of time, and I wanted my friends and my colleagues and my non-friends and my colleagues to all be here in a celebratory sort of way. The other piece is, when I was working in Philadelphia in the late 80s for a Black landscape architect, his name is Bill Wilson. He was the only Black landscape architect I'd ever met in my life. He had a contract to do projects in New York. So he would send me on the train to come up to Riverside, up to St. Nick, to actually measure benches. And I would get robbed every time, right? That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Because I would bring stuff that I didn't care getting robbed. It was my colleagues who brought shiny stuff that got robbed. But this reminds me, this is where I first kind of cut my teeth at making urban landscapes, which is in New York, and I had really forgotten about it. And the next piece to bookend that, since people are making references to our ancestors, I'm writing this book right now, and I was taken by a quote from Jimmy Baldwin in Go Tell It on the Mountain. And it's his birthday, I forget what year it is, and his mother gives him some money to go out to buy something. And where does he go? He goes to Central Park, to his favorite hill. He rushes up the hill, and he looks at the skyline, and he shouts out, Hosea, Hosea. And he can be anything he wants to be in the world. And he dreams for about 30 seconds. And of course, I'm improvising here. He dreams for about 30 seconds, and then he runs down the hill, and he bumps into an old white man, and he's about to explain, and the white man winks at him, and he feels great. But then he goes to Fifth Avenue, and he starts mumbling as he's walking down Fifth Avenue, they hate me, they hate me, they look at me, they hate me. And that duality is America. Right? There are these spaces where people like me, I don't need to have a doubleness. And I can find that in places like this. And so when I see people like me in places like this unfettered, it gives me hope that hopefully in the future, we'll actually build spaces to come together. I think we really have a lot to do. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Architectural League. I'm not like those guys, I don't have folders. I'd like to take this time to thank the Architectural League, the president and the board of directors for this award. It really does mean a lot. Rosalie and Paul, thank you guys so much. The speakers, Mario, Mabel, Sara, you guys, two of you guys are my colleagues I've grown with, and the third is someone I hope I inspire, and I hope she can take the reign and keep it going. Sara, you're really amazing. I've been coming to this city for the last 30 years. When I started teaching at Berkeley, I started giving lectures. You know, you get invited for lectures. And New York was one of those places that I was invited a lot. And over time, I participated in the academic institutions here, teaching, reviews, lecturing. I've worked with some of the faculty here, some of the best faculty in the world here, in architecture, landscape architecture, and urbanism. And I've worked with some of the best architectural firms in the world in New York, and they've become my friends. I'm not going to list them all. A lot of you are here, but I'd like to dedicate this award to one in particular that I had the opportunity to work with. And I have to say, in my years as an architect, he was probably one of my best friends, and this is the late Harry Cobb. This is the building that he designed down in South Carolina. But Harry called me on the phone one day. Someone in the office said, Harry Cobb is on the phone. And I'm like, who? Harry Cobb? No frickin' way. Because Harry is like Harry, right? So I go on the phone, and someone mentioned this at Harry's wake or celebration, that Harry has a pregnant pause, right? So Harry goes, Walter, I have a project for you. I have Guy, and I need you. And I said, I'm there. He didn't even say what project it was. But this was the project, the International African American Museum. I'm humbled by this award. And I remember prior to COVID, at the last award ceremony I went to, I think it was given to the Aga Khan, and I had rushed over to the Metro Club, and there were all of these people waiting for the Aga Khan to come out, his groupies. And I was like, wow, you get this medal and you get groupies. This is so amazing. And so this year when Mario called, Paul, we're going to do it differently. I'm like, no groupies? But then I thought, it's going to be in a park, and we're going to have a parade. That's probably better than groupies, right? I'm here with my friends. So guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you guys have done. And this is something I will remember forever. And hopefully we won't have to go back to the Metro Club in the future. And maybe we can find ways to make the city come alive and celebrate people in the environment and not inside an old celebrated building. I'd like to thank the Marching Cobras, which I heard were not here. They were here? Oh, they're coming, the Marching Cobras. The sax, Jason, and Mfouambila, the poet, Tonya. Awesome that you read that piece. I'm actually writing about it now. The graphics, Michael, Stephen, and Brant, Jerome, and Brandy, this has been amazing. And most of all, thanks to all my friends that I've had the chance to cultivate. My American Academy peeps are here. Hopefully my New York Restoration people are here. All of my great architectural friends and colleagues are here. And most of all, people that I don't know, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're feeling it. But thank you guys so much for coming out.
All right, so there's one more performance. And first of all, I think we need to give a round of thanks to our amazing statuesque holders of banners. And yeah, so.
Walter Hood, you do not know me. I never knew you existed. I was walking. I can't breathe in that thing. I was walking down the street the other day. I saw the flyer posted on a pipe, and I felt it my duty to be here. My sister's best friend is an architect. My sister went to Brooklyn Tech. I felt it my duty to be here. I skipped church. Hopefully none of my brothers and sisters are out here from church. Because you got to be in the Lord. But Walter, I'd never met you. And I heard you were brilliant. And as a black African woman who just had a birthday recently, I want to say, Kuji Chagulia, together we will win. That's Twee. Our people, black people, this park, they up there on the bell tower. I walked up to the bell tower. They up there shooting dope. They up there shooting. All around the park, they smoking. It's a disgrace. But this is a black man. And let him, I'm proud of you. And I don't even know you.
Yeah.